We all know that Final Girl is full of film pastiche and parody, but are there other IPs you can recreate using this game engine? Today I'm picking from some of my favourite scary IPs to see if I can recreate them using the Final Girl feature films. And just so you're aware, there's going to be some slightly scary footage in this video, so if you're one of our younger audiences, this may not be the video for you. One of my very favourite things about Final Girl is that it's got a mix and match system. Each of the feature films you buy comes with a killer and a location, and also it comes with 2 Final Girls. But the beauty of the system is you can take that location and use a different killer from a different box there. So the amount of different possibilities you've got if you bought all the different Final Girls from seasons 1, 2, 3, the special features and the vignettes is some sort of crazy maths that I cannot do. But I've been looking at the different combinations you can recreate, and I was thinking, ooh, there's some feature films here that touch on things I like, but there's many different IPs that they haven't touched on yet. That's not to say they won't be approaching them in the future, but let's see if we can recreate them now. A lot of IPs nowadays have questionable adaptations on board games because they need to be mass appeal. They don't really cater for the kind of dedicated board game hobbyist. But I love the engine in Final Girl. It's one of the best solo experiences that you can have. And I don't want to be limited just by having the killer in the location that came in the box. So here's the first of my 5 suggested combinations to recreate some of my favourite scary IPs that aren't so far covered in Final Girl. In The Last of Us, the world's gone a bit veggie. There's this weird infection that's turned a lot of humanity into these snarling, mushroom-faced monsters called clickers, who hunt using sound. You follow Ellie, and she's a sharp-tongued, resourceful teenager who's navigating around the ruins of civilization, shooting clickers as much as running away from them. Now, along the way, you'll be scavenging for parts to craft weapons in abandoned cabins. Basically, any place you can find a makeshift workbench to create these Molotov cocktails, shivs, and nail bombs. It's basically survival if you happen to really love DIY. I cried my way through both of the Last of Us games on the PlayStation. I really adore the narrative that it told. And seeing it on TV, I think it's fantastic how well those have translated to TV experiences. But how do you get that on the tabletop? There are, of course, some very, very good Last of Us games, but let's see if we can make it with Final Girl. Obviously, the clickers in The Last of Us are driven by sound. They can't see very well. And then when they do get hold of Ellie or Joel, they do some really big damage. Who does that sound like? Well, it's a bit like the eyeless that we get in Don't Make a Sound. In this one, you are having to weigh up how much actions you do because everything you're doing is creating sound, and using weapons is a really bad idea because when they get their claws on you, it's not good for your Final Girl. So that seems quite a good approximation of the clickers in The Last of Us. What does Joel and Ellie do a lot of in particularly the game The Last of Us? They do a lot of crafting. They take bits and pieces they find and they go to any sort of workbench and they recreate weapons and defences. That's a bit like what you do in the Windguard cottage. This abandoned cottage in the woods is a great place to start crafting, and in fact crafting is one of the unique quirks of this location. So, taking the eyeless and sticking it in Windguard cottage, you're not far off creating The Last of Us in Final Girl. The 2004 remake of Dawn of the Dead is a modern and much speedier take on a zombie classic that's written by James Gunn, yes, that Guardians of the Galaxy guy, and directed by Zack Snyder, before he started making superhero films all kind of deep and moody. A ragtag group of survivors are holed up in a suburban mall, and they find shelter and tension and a surprising amount of time for home improvement. There's baby drama, there's rooftop sniping, there's chainsaws, and there's even a zombie dog subplot because, you know, why not? It's gory, it's over the top, and it turns the American mall into a fortitude of both hope and horror. When I was looking at all the films in season 3, the one I was particularly excited about was this one. Now, The Killer from Tomorrow is designed by Evan Derrick, and we all know he likes to chuck in as many rules as he can, making some of the most creative, but also the most complicated killers and locations that you get in Final Girl. Now, I love the Terminator films, which this is obviously inspired by, but I don't really think they're kind of horror movies. So it's interesting that the franchise is heading in different directions when it comes to Final Girl. But the reason I was so excited about this location was because it is a shopping mall. And I thought, finally, that is the ideal location for what I think is my favourite vignette, Terror from the Grave. I blame Resident Evil for my love of zombie-related films. I was playing those games when I was a teenager and they left a big impact on me. So I really enjoyed the remake that we got of Dawn of the Dead. Terror from the Grave obviously is a vignette that does not have its own location. And the mall setting is obviously a key part of those zombie films. So being able to kind of give them a natural home, I really liked. And the fact that you can drive around different vehicles, in this case a motorbike, and mow down those zombies is really good fun. The location design for the mall is actually quite a good one for zombies because it funnels them through the entrances. That's where they turn up when they spawn. And you can have quite good vantage points when you're playing the Sunny Days Mall in this one and really kind of take those zombies out at a distance. And it's all about getting on top of those zombies, killing them before they kill you. So the location design of that, with its different kind of tiered areas, is really good fit for it. So if you want to play Terror from the Grave and have some zombies in your Final Girl, I think the Sunny Days Malls from this one is the best way you can recreate those classic films. Dead Space is a science fiction horror game that's set on this weird, creepy, abandoned space mining ship, except it's not very abandoned at all. It's now home to these necromorphs, these hideously evolving monsters made up from reanimated parts of dead bodies. There's all these flickering lights and spooky hallways and lots of dismembering. It's a survival horror at its blood-splattering best, where fixing things usually involve plasma cutters and a lot of screaming. I've already mentioned how much I enjoyed the Resident Evil games when I was younger. So Dead Space felt like Resident Evil in space, at least that's how it was sold to me. And obviously when I played those, I was absolutely gripped, although I did have to kind of play from behind a sofa as they get a bit scary and intense. Obviously you are in an abandoned spaceship, or at least you think it's abandoned. Something familiar if you've ever played the USS Conrad in this expansion, which is of course Into the Void. This is obviously heavily inspired by Alien, but it does present an interesting out of this world location to explore. Now in Dead Space we've got enemies that are foraging bits of bodies to make themselves bigger and scarier and more twisted and hideous, which is a bit like what you get when you fight the organism in this game, which is of course Panic at Station, I always get the name wrong, Panic at Station 2891, which is actually one of my lesser favourite Final Girls, but I do like the villain you get in this one. So taking the villain from here, putting it together in this one, and you get something that's kind of Dead Spacey. You can also have used the zombies mentioned earlier from, Terror from the Grave in here to kind of get that kind of space zombie experience. But I do find the organism quite good at reflecting that villain you kept on coming up against when you were playing particularly the first Dead Space game. In about 100 years' time, a research ship is going to crash land on Neverland Research Island, which is this remote wild jungle filled with dense foliage and hidden dangers. Now this thick jungle is actually going to become the home for the xenomorph as they break loose and start stalking their prey through the shadowy trees and dense vines. Amid all the chaos, a team, including Wendy, who's this clever android-human hybrid, must battle the relentless alien while navigating the island's untamed wilderness. It's basically going to be Alien mixed with Bear Grylls. I do love the Alien franchise. I just find it so chilling and intense, particularly the game Alien Isolation, which really had that feeling of dread as the xenomorph was roaming the corridors and it was eventually going to come for you. So Alien Earth looks like it's set before the first Alien film with some reason that someone has got a xenomorph and brought it back to Earth and dumped it on a jungle island. A jungle island that looks a little bit like the sacred groves that we get in Slaughter in the Groves. Now, being able to play this location without having to fight Inkinyamba is obviously a very good thing, and I think taking the alien from this and putting it in a jungle setting looks a bit like the trailers we've seen for Alien Earth. It certainly makes this location much more fun to play, and actually the alien with its evolution is a really great villain to play with. It's going to be interesting to see that combination because Obviously, having an alien outside of space and on Earth is going to be a bit quirky, but so is the series. I'm not quite sure how this is going to work, and I love the fact that in that series there seems to genuinely be an android final girl. Whether that plays out remains to be seen because I haven't seen the TV series yet, but having a kind of prototype cyborg Ripley is going to be really excited. The Purge movies are set in the near future America, where for 12 hours once a year, all crime, yes, even the really bad stuff, is completely legal. People lock their doors, put on these creepy masks, and make some very questionable life choices. Now, across the film, we follow different groups trying to survive the night. Some start hiding in their house, some decide it's a good idea to be fighting back. And a few even question whether this whole annual murder fest is really a good idea at all. Spoiler warning, it's not. I remember being totally engrossed by the Purge films. Their kind of social commentary on the direction that developed worlds are going, particularly America, is really telling, and it's a future I fear that we may be slightly edging towards, although I think the idea of having no laws whatsoever for a night is never really going to happen. Anyway, we have a street, and we have a terrified street of locked houses because outside bad things are happening. People being killed, there's all sorts of ransacking and looting and murder going on. A bit like you see in Nightmare on Maple Lane. I always want to say Meeple Lane there. I love the fact that in this location you can start banging on the doors begging to be let in, and you don't always get to come in. You have to convince them that you're not a baddie. Although you can tend to know who the baddies are in the Purge films because they are wearing masks, a bit like the intruders do in this one, a knock at the door. So there we go. Looks a bit like the Purge. We have masked intruders banging on your door trying to get in to kill you. All the time you're begging to be let in by a terrified house who want to not let you in because outside there's the masked intruders. The Purge seems like a quirky, unusual film to try to recreate in Final Girl, but I think this is going to create an experience that's probably just as intense as the films. So there we have it. 5 different IPs I've tried to semi-faithfully recreate in Final Girl, at least the best that I could do. But what is brilliant about Final Girl is that you can do this mix and matching, which allows you to create your own kind of personal best of Final Girl experience. And what's brilliant is that some of the locations that I really love might be the ones that you like least, and some of my favourite killers might be ones that you never really want to play against. Let me know in the comments down below what combinations you like doing, and have you ever managed to recreate different IPs that I haven't discussed? What combinations work for you, both in terms of playing and just in terms of creating something crazy just to see what happened. It's brilliant that the system does allow for that. Of course, if you're interested in buying Final Girl, a good place to go is your friendly local game store. And for me, in the southeast of England, that is of course Chaos Cards. You have a fantastic range of Final Girl. There's so much you can now get for it with minis and different types of expansions. There really is so different opportunities you have for just extending the life of Final Girl. Please don't just stick to the killers and the locations that come in those sets. It's fun just to mix and match and see what happens. If you're new to the channel, please do consider subscribing. We talk quite a lot about solo games now, particularly in the solo sessions playlist, so do have a look there. And we cover quite a lot of Final Girl and also different Ryder Games content. So if you like that publisher, if you like the developer, do look there for some more stuff. But as always, thank you so much for watching.